All right, I'll kick it off formally. I'm Meredith Courtney, the Director of Employer Engagement and Business Networks for the Lazarus Center, and we welcome everyone who's here with us today, students, prospective students, faculty, staff, supervisors, friends. We know we have a lot of different folks here from all the invitations that were sent out, especially from our panelists, so we're delighted you're here with us. And thank you for joining us to hear from these wonderful students who I've had the pleasure of working with over the past couple of weeks on these presentations, which you're going to be blown away by. This is the third panel of the 2026 Smith in the World Conference Series. Previously, we've had sessions on education, nonprofit, and social impact, and also the health professions industries. And future sessions will focus on government law and public policy, arts, media, and communications, and STEM fields. So we invite you to sign up for those additional conferences happening throughout the month of January. I think we'll put a link in the chat a little bit later so you can sign up for additional conferences. So what is Smith in the World? The Smith in the World Conference celebrates our students off-campus experiential learning, including their internships, community service, and research. And students in these presentations reflect on how these experiences have impacted their academic and professional paths and goals. The Smith in the World is part of the college's spring showcases, which you can learn about on our website. It's a series of spring events happening across campus. And again, our panelists today will share presentations about these experiences and how they've impacted them both personally and professionally, and also how Smith prepared them for their experiences. So I'm honored to introduce our panelists today. We have Chioma Opara, Aissata Diop, and Marla Amarsaikhan. And today's session will be recorded, so we ask that audience members please do keep your microphones muted. You can submit your questions for the presenters using the chat, and we will field questions after all the presentations have finished. So we'll have all of the presenters go in a row, and then at the end, we'll take questions and open it up for Q&A. So with that, I think I covered all of the housekeeping items. Now we'll turn it over to the exciting part of the presentation, which is our first panelist, Chioma. Chioma, if you'd like to take it away and share your screen, we're delighted to hear your story.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I will be sharing my screen right now. Just to double check, can everyone see my screen? If I can get a thumbs up, that'll be great. Sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. Hello, my name is Chioma Opara. I'm class of 2027, so I'm a current junior here at Smith. I'm a computer science and quantitative economics double major. Last time I had the opportunity to intern at BCG, a management consulting firm, and today I'll be going through reflections from my internship, and I'll walk you through from how I got my internship to how I prepared for it, going through the internship itself and how that translated into my work here at Smith, and then next steps going forward. So in terms of getting my internship, I'm just going to start with why I chose to intern at BCG and consulting in general. So I came to college and I chose my economics major because I've always been interested in how economics grow and how private firms help to support the growth of any given economy. So I remember my first year, I was talking with a Smith alum who was a junior at the time, Juliana McConaughey, and I told her that I would love to get an internship where I could gain experience on how firms in general grow, how they function, the kinds of problems that they run into, and how they address these problems. Now, at this time, I knew nothing about consulting or the work that consultants did. So when Juliana asked me if I had considered consulting, I obviously told her no. And then she recommended that I look into the Bridge to Consulting program at BCG because she thought I'll be a good fit for it. That's when my journey with BCG began. So I applied to the Bridge to Consulting workshop in the spring semester of my first year, and I got the opportunity to be flown out to their Chicago office for this workshop in June, so summer of my very first year, and I found it to be a transformative experience. The Bridge Consulting Workshop is essentially a two-day program where you get to learn about BCG as a firm and the work they do, but even more than that, You go through professional development workshops, so from personal branding to just workshops and how to maintain your LinkedIn profile. And I loved it. I loved every moment of it. But even more than the workshops, I love that I got the opportunity to network with company professionals and to ask questions about the firm, about internship opportunities, and even more than that, about the opportunities that the full-time professionals had taken advantage of while they were at BCG. What I should have known before going to this workshop, but I didn't know, was that coming to the workshop gave you the opportunity to interview for the firm. And you didn't just interview, but you interviewed early. So the typical BCG summer associate role opens up in August, September, but instead the bridge to consulting participants got to interview early, so around July. I went through 2 rounds of interview, and this is typical. So the very first round was an online case interview where I walked through kind of a demo problem. So I have a client and I have a problem. I have to walk through how I would go about solving this case. But that was just with the chatbot. After that, I had a live behavioral interview. And then I went on to the final round of the interview, which is round two. That's a two back-to-back interviews over 90 minutes, and you run through about 15 minutes of a behavioral interview and then 30 minutes of a case interview, which is typically a problem that whoever's interviewing you has gone through at the company. But then you just get to solve it in about 45 minutes, so a very short and sanitized version of the problem. The entire process of interviewing is pretty short, and I liked it. It was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. And on the last day of my second round interview, I received my offer. I was excited, as you can imagine, and this excitement continued into even starting the internship. What I wasn't prepared for was how nervous I would become about starting the internship by the time I got to the fall and I was telling people what I intended to do over the summer. So there are mentions of like, well, you have to know PowerPoint, you have to know Excel, and I wasn't very confident in this. Now, all of that was great. I somehow survived all the nerves and I started at BCG in June of 2025. The very first picture you see here is a data center. My project was focused on data centers. So we worked with an economic development agency to create a template for reviewing and approving data center investments. So what does a good deal look like in terms of the data center developer, but also in terms of the community that the developer is building in? My flow really focused on researching policies across the US that affect data center investments to inform our approach, and also researching other deals that had been made. So what turned out to be good and what wasn't so great. Now, my typical day would start with a 9 a.m. check-in with my team, and then I would go for a cup of chai latte. I loved the BCG Boston chai latte. And then I would start my morning work. This picture here is a picture of my friend and I just on a regular work day. So most of my morning will be working on whatever task has been assigned to me for the day. And then I'll break for lunch with other interns. This picture is a view from the 12th floor of the Boston office during one of my lunch breaks. And then I will return to working and we typically have checkout with my team and then wrap up around 7 or 8 p.m. Now, there are some days where we had fun events in the evening, and so the 7 p.m. was like a great, oh my goodness, I don't want to end this. This picture here is one of our very first intern events, and it was a trivia competition where my team won first place, and I got this really cool speaker. But sometimes the intern events would take us out of the office. Here I'm at my very first baseball game, and we went to watch the Boston Red Sox play. This was all fun. You can see I'm smiling in most of this picture, so I did love and enjoy the internship. But I had spoken about nerves, and the nerves did not disappear even when I was smiling. So, how did I deal with that? Well, I did get better at PowerPoint and Excel from just doing the work. So, I just learned that sometimes you just have to calm down and do the work to learn. But even more than that, I found that the skills themselves were only one small part of what I learned during the internship. What ended up mattering most to me is what I like to call the gems I collected, which were the mindset shifts I attained during the course of the internship. So I'm going to be sharing 3 of my gems with you today. The very first one was learning to own my own journey. Now, this was a phrase that you will hear a lot if you go to any BCG office right from training week. But I think it really hit me when I was having a conversation with one of the senior members of my team. And he said to me, Chioma, you're smart and your level of output is incredible, but I need you to stop thinking of yourself as an analyst. And I need you to start showing up as a core member of the team. My initial reaction was like, but I am an analyst. I'm a summer intern. That's what I am. How else do I show up? But I understood that what he was asking me was to go beyond just like I kind of just trying to help out the team and then to see my work as critical and valuable to the team. So it's one thing to contribute to meetings, but it's another thing to say that we should do this and really sound like you believe it. I think that conversation really empowered me to be vocal in meetings, to push back and ask questions when I wasn't sure where the team was headed, and also to just be very comfortable telling my manager, well, from the work I've done, these are the next steps I think we should be taking. And this spoke to me not just about like the team itself and how the entire team viewed my contribution, but to the entire culture at BCG, which is very empowering. People want to support you, people want you to grow, people want you to move up. The second gem was more on feedback, which I mean, you will start to hear a lot about me having conversations and getting feedback. But at the midpoint of my program, like many of the other interns, I got a mid-program feedback from my manager. Now, mine was mostly positive. So I was like, well, I seem to be doing well. Hopefully, I get a return offer. There were a few constructive feedbacks, and I thought I had understood it. So when I got an email from the learning and development employee assigned to the interns, I almost passed it up. I'm very glad I did not. Because sitting with her, I realized how processing feedback is not just about, oh, I don't know this and I should get better, but it was also about creating concrete plans on how to take the constructive feedback and apply to your day to day. I remember sitting down meeting with her, and then we came up with templates on how to ask very structured questions in leadership meeting. And believe it or not, that was one of my feedback to be more structured with my question asking. And it may seem like a small point, but being able to keep your questions concise and relevant, especially when there's very restricted time for the meeting, like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and you know you're not going to get in that meeting with the MDP or client for another week, it becomes very critical. So I learned how to be very concise, but even more than that, I learned a strategy for how to approach feedback, both at BCG and beyond. My third gem is more related to the overall structure of BCG, which is being pragmatic when approaching problems. A lot of the work that's given to the company is very messy because it's real life, and you have to somehow create a scope of work and decide what you need to deliver. Now, the instinct is to jump into the work or to be overwhelmed by what's happening. And that's how I felt when I started at the company. But I remember talking to a managing director and partner, and he said to me, like, this work is messy. The only way to get it done, because it's likely never been done before, is to really sit down at the beginning and think through what is the question we are answering? And then sketch out what is the output that we need to deliver. No matter how rough it is, it helps to keep the team precise and moving towards one shared goal. And this was something I took from the company and continue to apply here at Smith now, especially in my role as the co-chair of the Pan-African Students Association. This picture is during one of the panels at the Career Symposium by the Pan-African Students Association this past semester. Now, as a co-chair, I was basically at the forefront of launching our very first annual Career Symposium. And it was scary. I remember sitting the first meeting, I was just like, I don't even know what a huge career symposium should look like beyond the conferences I've attended, what goes on behind the scenes. But it was really helpful to take from my lesson at BCG and think to myself, why are we even having the symposium in the first place? I made the entire team write it out on a doc that we could continue to go back and review. And then the second thing was to think through very explicitly and articulate what would a successful event look like? Because to me, that was our deliverable. And I realized that it changed the entire game. It changed how I drove the meetings, how hard I drove the team and myself, how I was just more confident about reaching out to partners, both on campus and off campus, to make the events a success, being very intentional about translating notes in our meetings into actionable items, and keeping the team very focused on delivery, but not just delivery, prompt delivery of items. And this was something I don't think I would have done as well had I not interned at BCG. The second ways that the internship impacted just how I show up at Smith were ways I had not anticipated at all. For my operating systems project, my familiarity with AI through the internship just was crucial in making it successful. I spent a lot of my time at the internship with working with AI, prompting it, using it as a thinking partner. And I think just those techniques that I picked up, both consciously and unconsciously, were very critical when I needed to explore the Linux code base, and understanding the Linux code base was crucial to helping my final project. And that is a huge code base, like hundreds of files, thousands of lines of code. And leveraging AI made it possible for me to finish my project within the 3 months I had for the semester. The third way that BCG impacted me was actually very different from all the other ones, and it's what I think of as my creative exploration. Now, I've always been interested in fiction and storytelling. I've always enjoyed it, but having an opportunity to connect with people over this shared love at the office really reminded me that I wanted to explore it more. I have been taking an intro to creative writing classes my first year, and I finally did it last semester because of those conversations I had over the summer. The picture here, The Intentions of Thunder, is my current favorite poetry collection from a poet whose reading I went to this past semester as a requirement for the class. So what's coming after BCG? Well, in terms of next steps, this summer I will be returning to BCG for my junior year internship. This picture is a picture of myself and my manager, Abigail, the day after I received my return offer, and we were trying clams for the very first time. So just exploring new opportunities is a huge part of me and was also a huge part of my experience at BCG. While I'm waiting for to restart my junior year internship, I plan to continue to explore, to continue to problem solve, but especially taking advantage of my computer science background, which honestly I've neglected until now. A friend and I are working on a project to help make rides to the airports and to around college towns more accessible for college students in rural and suburban campuses. And there's a picture of the landing page for our app, which is still in development. And I just plan to continue taking advantage of the opportunities at Smith. Smith prepared me a lot for the internship, especially the Wall Street Prep program. That was definitely a good stepping stone in managing my nerves around PowerPoint. But I plan to continue exploring. This picture here is from May 2025, while I was taking a tour in Greece as part of an art and archaeology program through the Smith Global Flex program. So thank you guys so much. I'm happy to expand on any of my experiences and anything I've talked about today during the Q&A session.
Thank you, Chioma. Wonderful presentation. I absolutely love seeing your pictures of having fun with your colleagues in Boston, and your gems are wonderful lessons. Love hearing how you brought those back to Smith and how you're continuing to incorporate those into your personal and professional life. And congratulations on your return offer. That's amazing. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. If anyone has questions, like we said, please put them in the chat and we can address them after the presentations are done. So without further ado, we'll hand it off to our second presenter, Aissata, who will share her story, which is a little bit different and very, very interesting project you'll hear about.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm Aissata Diop, and I just graduated from Smith College with a bachelor's in mathematics. This summer, 2025, I had the pleasure of interning with development under their consultrepreneurship program. And although I come from a hard STEM program, this was absolutely one of my favorite internships that I've done. And especially working with development was a privilege, as I was able to learn about myself as a Black person and where I stand financially in the world. And development aims to cultivate historically and globally conscious Black visionary leaders. And what that looked like was through a virtual 10-week summer internship where they combined African economics history, mentorship. But what really stuck out the most to me, what was my favorite part, was the theoretical foundations, as we got to learn about our history through media, and also guest lecturers from entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs and professors as well. And this was a pivotal aspect of the internship as I was able to understand where I came from, where am I now, and it also helped me prepare for my future as a Black business owner. And since it's a consultrepreneurship, there were two aspects, consulting and entrepreneur. And the first part was working with a wonderful company based in Uganda, the Hope Permaculture Center, which was rooted in to inspire sustainability, engage with nature, and promote environmental stewardship through education and innovation. And it was so cool to work with the founders and the CEOs of the company intimately and be able to provide solutions, as it was my first time to work with people with a high stature within a company. So it helped me build a lot of confidence in expressing solutions and not feel as intimidated as well. And although I came from a hard STEM background, thanks to like the courses at Smith, such as psychology and ethics and society, which was a philosophy course, that really helped, especially when it came to marketing, because it's just manipulation and figuring out human behavior. So one of my another favorite part was the marketing and branding, as I was able to express my creative side while keeping in mind what were the aspects that our clients also wanted to shine through. And throughout the research, which also was different from the research I've done in the past, as they were mostly computational heavy, we did a SWOT analysis. And we figured out that the strengths, which means strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And the strengths of the company were that they understood their target audience really well, which is children, youth, and parents, and they had great visibility on Google Maps. However, they did not have a website and they also lack social media presence, which is not good in these day of age. However, they also had a lot of opportunities to grow thanks to their medicinal herbs that they sell, which are far affordable and effective. And we also, throughout our research with my team, we noticed that there were a few threats as their competitors had better marketing, and we also trying to figure out how to maintain customer loyalty as well. And this is where I got to really get creative and use my knowledge in psychology through the company colors. And we decided that blue, brown, and green will be the primary colors of the logo, as blue, it represents purity, water, serenity. Green is represents nature, hope, health, and prosperity. And brown, earthiness, wisdom, and health. And our goal was to create a cohesive brand identity grounded in nature, trust, and wellness, which really is one of the ethos of HPC. And in order to celebrate sustainability, we found a way to create biodegradable packaging that the company can also use. And it was like with very basic ingredients that most people have in their kitchen cabinets. Another thing we did was to make a book template that the center can provide, as they will sell medicinal plants and trees. And just like on a pill bottle, there will be this directions, usage, warnings, and pictures of the medicinal plant or herb. And As we said in a SWOT analysis, one of the key challenges was their lack of social media presence on the internet. So we encouraged them to hire a social media manager, a website developer, and photographer. As I like to think of it as makeup. So we already know who the brand identity, but now you need an image that everyone will judge the company by. So that's why having a photographer for the events was very important, as it's the first impression of the company. And as mentioned before, we want to focus on the education and the youth. And we did this. One way to engage with the audience was through short educational videos, but we also want to take into account that it's based in Uganda, and we'd also like to include native languages and English. And I found this video on TikTok that I absolutely love. It's one activity that we encourage them to implement which is to make your own cocoa, your own chocolate. And let me see if I can play it over again, which you can see here in this video had just passed. And we also encourage them to create short videos on YouTube where they have a large audience, where they can get a large audience. But to make cocoa, chocolate, and also coffee beans is one thing that stuck out the most to us, as it's fun, anyone can do it, and you can bring it back home and create great memories as well. However, we also want to promote the center to farmers, but farmers got a bad rep. So we want to show that farmers can also have a soft life. And one way was to find images of farmers that were happy and to show people that anyone can be a farmer. I can be a farmer. You can be a farmer as well. And our goal is to also help reduce the use of chemicals and promote sustainability, and to market this through WhatsApp communities and how-to videos on YouTube, as a lot of people from the diaspora stay connected through YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. Another way to market to schools and the youth is through green kits, where they can make their own little plants, bring it back home, or activities where they can make their own chocolate or coffee, especially around Valentine's Day. And corporations or like parents, we wanted to promote sustainability with office gardens and include green kits for them as well, and market through WhatsApp community groups and YouTube as well. As for ecotourism, which is gaining much popularity, especially in East Africa, we would like to include travel packages, sustainable traveling, and also Eco B&B, which is really interesting. I learned about it through research. It's like Airbnb, but it has sustainable accommodation. And now I'm going to talk about the second part of the consultrepreneurship, which is the entrepreneurship aspect, based on my project, So, which targets to eliminate malaria rates globally, as we had over 282 million cases in 2024, and since 2015, it almost rise by 10%. And my goal is to initiate in Mali and then expand globally. But I'd like to focus in West Africa first, as we experience the most cases of mortality. And it's quite unfortunate because there's these little monsters, and yet they're having such a high mortality rate. And we can also base the anti-mosquito plants from Mali, such as citronella, peppermint, and neem, which is here in abundance and extremely affordable. However, to expand my impact, I'd like to partner with organizations such as the World Health Organization and UNICEF. And it's really thanks to my DIF advisor, Nasifa, that helped me create a business proposal and a business plan, which is extremely intimidating because there were so many details that got into it, but thanks to her guidance, I was able to finalize those. And now I'm currently on the marketing and formulation stage in Mali. And another aspect of the consultrepreneurship was there was we were being graded by our performance, and I ended up being the best performer, and I got $500 award. And I finally got to buy my first stock of Apple, which was my goal for years, and also bought gold with that $500. And working with development was really out of my comfort zone as it was something new, but it was absolutely my favorite internship that I've done. And I also found out about it through the Lazarus Center newsletter just a few weeks before the summer. And I had the pleasure to also invite Essie, who is the founder and with us today. And one thing that really solidified my experience with them is that I gained a lot more confidence as a business owner and a consultant, as I love solving problems, but I also got to do it in a creative way as well. And it's really thanks to Smith thanks to their open curriculum that really gave me the confidence to try something new. And not only to try something new, it also laid the foundation for my interest into finance, business, and consulting as a career as well. And so thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. You can contact me through my email, or I'm also available on WhatsApp.
Thank you so much. Amazing story. I just love how you took how your interest in STEM turned into this interest in marketing and entrepreneurship, and how you're incorporating it into your future goals. So an amazing story. You're doing amazing work that really has impact. So thank you for sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it. So we have our last but certainly not least presenter, who's Marla. I will share or pass things along to Marla to round us out for the presentations. Once again, remember that there are opportunities to share questions in the chat. But in the meantime, we will listen to Marla's story about working at a boutique consulting firm, which is really compelling. So Marla, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you so much, Meredith. Can everybody see my screen okay? Great. So hi everyone, thank you guys for joining today's Smith in the World panel. My name is Marla, and I'll be presenting about my consulting internship at Noda Consulting in the past summer. So I'll be covering a little bit more about myself, what Noda Consulting does, and how I got the internship, and talking a little bit more about my experience, and the key takeaways that I had from the internship, and I'll finish off the presentation with the Smith resources available on campus. So as I mentioned, my name is Marla. I'm currently a sophomore at Smith studying quant econ and data science. I'm involved in our Smith College Consulting Club, our investment club, and our Asian Student Association. In my free time, I love to go to the gym and weightlift. I love listening to R&B music, and I love watching psychological thrillers and rom-coms. So, Noda Consulting is a boutique management consulting firm based in Virginia, and they specialize in M&A and cost and revenue programs, and then more practices. And an interesting thing about Noda is that there are two other Smithies there. This is Pamela. She graduated in 2022, and she works as a senior consultant there. And this is Rachel. She graduated in 2013 and she currently works as the vice president there. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about how I was able to get the internship. And to make things a little bit easier to explain, I have created a timeline from January 2025 to May 2025. So from January to February, I spent a lot of time exploring the consulting industry. I was also interested in finance and I was trying to figure out which way I wanted to go. And I spent a lot of time LinkedIn searching, and I really recommend the LinkedIn search engine. And so I was able to find a lot of alumni to talk to and hear a little bit more about their experiences. Um, and then in March, I have a screenshot of the message that I sent to Pamela on LinkedIn. And I said, "Hi, Pamela. I'm a student at Smith College studying quant econ and government. I'm interested in a career in consulting and would love to connect and hear about your experience." And she was kind enough to get back to me, and we set up a time to talk. And I initially went into this conversation with no intention of trying to get an internship at NODA. I just wanted to hear about her experiences there. And she actually ended up connecting me with Rachel. Um, and I got to talk to Rachel and hear more about her experiences there. And then I introduced my idea of wanting to intern at NODA Consulting. And she said she helped me set up a time to talk with Mike, who's the founder and president of NODA Consulting. And so after the conversation, I was able to sign the contract for the internship and start my internship there. And so the main responsibilities that I had during the internships, have divided them up into three sections. So a lot of my work involved templatizing and cleaning up client-facing decks. So this involved a lot of looking at past projects that Noda had done and really understanding the content behind them and the responsibilities that Noda had to do. And this involved a lot of looking at examples of how projects were structured. I was looking at timelines, looking at how different phases of the projects were divided up and how they were divided up to which consultant. And a really interesting project that I got to work on or get exposed to during this time was a carve-out project. And if you don't know what a carve-out is, it's basically when a parent company decides to sell a specific part of their company or a division to an outside investor. And so Noda was tasked with a project like that. And the client initially approached Noda because they were having difficulties fully separating the two entities. And then Noda needed to step in and help with their infrastructure, analytics, some of their cybersecurity functions. And so I got to learn a lot more about that. And a great thing about interning at a boutique consulting firm is that it is a smaller company, and I was working with a team of less than 5 people, and I was working really closely with the founder, Mike, and really picking his brains about the different consulting tasks that they were performing, and it was a really great experience. And another thing that I was working on was the marketing and research on prospective clients. A fun fact about me is I hope to grow my own business in the future. And so I really got to learn a little bit more about how businesses, not even just consulting businesses, but businesses in general, were able to grow and expand their businesses by building client relationships. And so this also involved looking at the past projects that Noda was working on, developing a profile of the clients, and then finding a similar company, and then reaching out to them and finding the right people to reach out to. And then I also worked on the refining past project summaries. And so in consulting, they call these use cases. And so I learned how to communicate some of these complex ideas and operations into kind of a manageable, concise, client-ready format. And Noda actually gets these summaries and then presents it to new clients to show their capabilities. And then a little bit more about some of the key takeaways I had for the recruiting process. One thing that I really, really want to emphasize is the importance of intentional networking. And maybe if there are if there are any first years or sophomores in the audience who are maybe looking for internships, this is the biggest advice I would give, because I showed you guys a timeline in the previous slides, and I was a first year at the time, and I think I wasted a lot of time. Um, Not being able to be very intentional about what I was searching for in a conversation. And so I spent about a month and a half or 2 months reaching out to people and consultants who were working at these bigger companies. And I wasn't really being intentional about that I was searching for an internship. And these bigger companies that you want to intern at, they already have their pre-existing pipelines for juniors and seniors. So they were obviously not going to be able to help me with getting an internship as a first year. And so when I decided to change the angle of my conversations and say, hey, I'm interested in getting more of a practical experience in consulting, and I'm searching for an internship to do over the summer. I got a lot more responses. And apart from Noda Consulting, I was able to intern at another financial advisory firm over the summer. And that's also how I was able to get that internship, because I reached out to a boutique, smaller firm, and I reached out to their CEO directly to ask and set up a time to talk and talk about how I wanted to intern at their company, because I was interested in the work that they were doing. And she was really happy. And one thing about these smaller companies is that not all of them have not all of them have had interns before. And so when I approached her and when I approached Mike, they said they had never had an intern before. But I approached her with, I've never been an intern before, so let me be your first intern and we can do this together. And they really liked that response. And another thing is building a genuine connection. So I mentioned the importance of approaching them with, directly about wanting an internship, but it's also important to really want to learn about their work first and develop a genuine connection and in building a stay consistent in, talking to them. I recently just emailed a bunch of people that I've talked to in the past year about, New Year's, and checking in on them and learning more about how their career is going. And then I also want to emphasize the importance of persistence, and this goes with the next point of being okay with rejection. Um, you know, as a first year, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I would hear, a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't offer you an internship at this time," or "Oh, I can't talk to you at this time." A lot of these consultants are super busy, so I would say it's important to just continue going. I didn't even think I would be able to get an internship after my first year, but I was able to do it because I continued pushing. Um, and I really want to emphasize the importance of that. And then for the internship portion, I think for anybody trying to explore a new field, I think interning or working at a boutique firm is a great idea, because they have a smaller team, which means there's much more opportunities to learn closely from people who have been in the industry for long amounts of time. And I also want to mention our praxis funding available at Smith. Um, a lot of these boutique firms, sometimes they don't have the resources to be able to get an intern and pay them. So I was able to take out my praxis funding to intern at Noda, and so this was a great way for them to get help from me as an intern, but also for me to learn about the practical implications of consulting, but just by taking out the praxis funding. And then I also want to emphasize the importance of tapping into your network. We talk about this a lot in Lazarus and also our consulting club and investment club, but it is truly important, because when I initially approached Pamela, I was just wanting to talk and hear more about her work, and then this led to an entire internship. So it's super important to stay connected to Smith alumni out there, because they're always really open to talking. And then I also want to talk about the importance of always being open to learning. Um, when I was internship searching, a upperclassman came up to me and she said, "A closed mouth never gets fed," and that has really stuck with me. And so, any opportunity that's available, I am ready to jump on there and learn and talk to new people. So I really, that's a thing that I live by now. So, yeah, and I wanted to end it off with talking about some of the Smith resources available. Our Smith Consulting Club meets biweekly on Wednesdays from 7 to 8 in the Conway Center. We learn more about consulting. We do host a lot of case workshops, networking events, and more opportunities. So I definitely recommend checking them out. That you can connect with them on Instagram, LinkedIn, and through email at consultingclub@smith.edu. And if you wanted to connect with me, you can do that on LinkedIn, and also you can reach out to me directly on my email. And I also want to emphasize reaching out to Lazarus Center. They have a lot of resources available, and past panelists have even mentioned getting their internships through Lazarus. So I can't emphasize enough how helpful Lazarus Center is. And obviously reaching out to Smith Alumni Network through LinkedIn. And it's also important to reach out to current Smithies who have done internships in consulting in the past. I've actually reached out to Chioma to talk about her experiences at BCG, and she's been kind enough to help me with my casing. So definitely reach out to current smithies who are interning, or they can help you with how to break into consulting, because it's such a competitive field to enter. And that's all I have for today's presentations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marla. Wonderful story. I think if anyone is on the call that's a student and is coming to the Lazarus Center, you've heard probably from all of us, any career advisor, about the importance of networking and getting to know and connecting with alums through LinkedIn. And this is just an amazing story of how Marla was able to make that connection and turn it into a real opportunity. And I love your advice about targeting boutique firms and smaller organizations, and just really going for it and emailing the CEO or messaging the CEO about making things possible for yourself. So congratulations on making that opportunity possible for you and for sharing your advice with others. Really appreciate it. All right, well, that concludes our formal presentations for today. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm taking a look at the chat here to see if we have any questions. Looks like we have a few. So let's see. So Chioma, you talked about mindset shifts, right? How your mindset shifted. And I guess the question is, what is, and this I guess can go to anybody as well. What maybe surprised you about your internship? And then anyone else can feel free to chime in here if there were any surprises, or if you experienced kind of that mindset shift throughout your internship that you went in with that changed.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Meredith. I would say, honestly, one of the biggest things that surprised me was just the empowerment. Because you hear a lot about big consulting firms working you really hard. Like, I felt like all of the messaging I got before the internship was like, this is really hard. This is hard. You're going to be working late. And I understood that. But I wanted to learn. So I kind of went in with, I'll probably be working super hard and I wouldn't have any time for myself. And then I realized I did enjoy it. Like, I did work hard and I did stay late sometimes, but it was never because like someone's just trying to be mean. Like, I would stay late and be happy about staying late because I was that involved in the work. So I think I was just impressed by how caring the managers were and how people wanted to show you off. Like, I remember my manager, like every single thing I did, whenever she was emailing the entire team, she would like make sure to bump up stuff I had done that she had found impressive to the managing directors and partners. So there was that visibility and that culture of support. And then I even saw some BCG employees who had left the company, but they would come back to I'd like maybe host workshops for the company itself, or to attend certain events. So there was no like bad blood around leaving and coming back into the company. So it almost felt like a flow of knowledge, and people understood that circumstances change and what people need at a time changes, but and they would support you in whatever decision that you decided on.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And I think like from our conversations, you've shared some of this, and it's really, I think, indicative of the culture at BCG and why you've chosen to go back there. So that's amazing. Thank you. Let's see. We have in the chat, I think a few of you, so Chioma and Marla, and Aissata, all of you gave some great advice about the internship search process. Somebody asked if there's any additional advice any of you might have for Smith students who are currently looking for internships or other experiences over the summer outside Smith.
I would like to answer.
Great.
I would say read the emails because we have a bad rep at Smith for not reading emails. And to sign up, I would subscribe to the Lazarus Center's newsletters for arts and communications, business, STEM. So I made sure to like subscribe to as many newsletters as possible because you never know. I have many interests, and that was a great time to explore those interests as well. So for me, looking at the newsletters regularly for opportunities help, subscribing to Handshake, and also communicating with faculty as well.
I want to talk about the opportunities available through our club, specifically our consulting club and our investment club. We have Slack channels for both clubs, and a lot for the investment club. Our Slack channel is very, very active, and a lot of alumni or people who have previously interned at big companies are able to share some of the opportunities available. And there's always people pushing for other smithies to break into finance and consulting, especially because we come from a liberal arts background, so it's hard to do. And so smithies are very supportive in that they're always providing opportunities for other smithies to be able to break into these fields, especially as women, especially as students who are coming from a liberal arts background. So I definitely recommend utilizing the resources available at our clubs at our campus.
Yeah, I would add on to what Aissata and Marla have said and just talking with people. Because a lot of times I see students talking with people on LinkedIn and reaching out to professionals, and that is great, highly recommend, but also don't underestimate just how much information other smoothies have. And I've found that helpful in finding opportunities, whether it's like jobs or like travel opportunities or even just where to find funding for different things that you need. So definitely talking with smoothies and people will remember because the smoothie you're talking to today, it's going to be an alum at a company tomorrow and could refer you if you build that relationship.
Great advice. Thank you. And we did not plug Aissata to mention the Lazarus Center emails. That was not a plug from me, but I really appreciate that you gave us a shout out there because we do send out a lot of emails, but they do have really great content and a lot of job and internship opportunities are available. So yes, even though it seems like sometimes there's a lot of email, you can find some gold in there sometimes. So thank you for that. This is we probably have time for one more question. Emily, is that about right? One more, maybe? Okay. There's a good one in the chat here from someone who's joining us about case interviews. And so if anyone has any advice about case interviews if you had to go through to get your internship or just think for consulting in general, case interviews, kind of what work did you do to upskill yourself on how to do well and perform well in case interviews?
I want to give a shout out to our consulting club. We host a lot of case workshops. So if you're interested in going to consulting and don't really know how to approach casing, just because the learning curve for casing is a very steep curve, and we don't at Smith we don't really have business classes or anything. So sometimes it might be hard to approach casing, and so our consulting club hosts workshops for you to learn how to do casing. And it's also I recommend reaching out to people who have gone through the internship process at these bigger firms like Bain and BCG, and reaching out to them and learning more about how they were able to case. And they're happy to set up a time to case with you. And I can't stress how important it is to case with other people because it's not really something you can do alone, because you need constant feedback from the other person. So I definitely recommend reaching out to people who have previously gone through the interview process and asking about their experiences and asking them to case you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marla. I will add on to what Malhar said. Like in between the live case interview prep that you're doing with people, I'd also highly recommend just doing practice on certain skill areas on websites like Case Coach. So Case Coach was a big one I used a lot while preparing for my internship. Hopefully Lazarus Center gives us free subscription to that. Put a little plug in there. But like I had access to that through the Bridge to Consulting workshop. So it's also great to apply to companies like Insights programs or first year sophomore programs because sometimes those things come with free subscription benefits.
That's a great point. Thank you. Yes, a lot of resources out there. And of course, there are resources here in the Lazarus Center. We can help people go through um, mock interviews, case interviews here with an advisor, and we have other resources in our library as well. So for anyone who's interested in consulting, and the Consulting Club is an amazing resource, and we have some resources here too. So it is about 5:29, so I think that is our signal to wrap things up. Really, really appreciate all of you joining us today. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and for sharing your amazing experiences and all of your insights. I really love how you took all of what you learned in your internships and brought it back to your life at Smith and your personal and professional life and your goals. So I hope everyone on the call enjoyed this session just as much as I did and learned so much like I did. Again, we encourage you to register for additional upcoming panels. If you want to hear about stories from other career communities and industries. And with that, we will say good evening for those of you who are here with us on Eastern Time, and thanks for joining. And we will hopefully see you at a future Smith in the World panel.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.